once you throw out faith and belief and religion, it does not leave you empty. What it does is it creates a sort of a new egg, as it were, something that can be hatched into something new. I'm always jealous of people who have lost their clothing, can stand naked in the world and go shopping for something, and they don't have to go into the tropes of past belief in order to still find mystery. And the other thing about the word spiritual is just because you're not religious, don't throw that word away. My essence about my argument here is that religion appropriated the word spiritual, and it is natural to us to want to have this sense, be it an individual connection to self, family, or community, or to the earth itself. And it doesn't need the trappings that we've given it in the past.
This is the Everyone's Agnostic Podcast with Cass Midgley and Marie Delafont.
We interview people you don't know about a subject no one wants to talk about. We hope to encourage people in the process of deconstructing their faith and help curb the loneliness that accompanies it. We think the world is a better place when more people live by sight, not by faith. Please subscribe to our podcast and leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, you can support us monetarily in 2 easy ways. You can pledge
$1 million
or more through Patreon. That's patreon.com/EA podcast, or leave a lump sum donation through PayPal at our website, everyone'sagnostic.com. The smallest contribution is greatly appreciated.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 249 of the Everyone's Agnostic Podcast. I'm Cass Midgley. Today, Marie Delafont and I talk with Tom Larson, author of the book Spirituality and the Writer, A Personal Inquiry. Journalist, book and music critic, and memoirist Thomas Larson is a specialist in recording one's life adventures and memories in writing, a genre known as memoir. Among his many books is The Memoir and the Memoirist, Reading and Writing Personal Narrative, and What Exactly Happened, 4 essays on the craft of memoir. He's a 20-year staff writer for the San Diego Reader, a 6-year book review editor for River Teeth, and a former music critic for the Santa Fe New Mexican. Larson speaks and holds workshops on writing the memoir and writing the spiritual memoir. Tom writes of his book Spirituality and the Writer, much of my book focuses on writers who have left religion or who have no religious bias, and those facts guide the writing. Many explore, often on a quest, to understand what in their experience they don't understand and why they are haunted by absence and doubt. And many write what we call deconversion narratives, of which I can talk a great deal about, leaving religion, but still loving the people who raised them within it, unquote. This is a short interview, less than 40 minutes. His website is thomaslarson, LARSON.com. Before we get into our talk with Tom Larson, I want to point out a few things. This is our off week. After 4 years of being a weekly show, we moved to every other week for personal reasons in my life. Those reasons have subsided enough that I'd like to add an episode in between our current schedule that I'd like to call One-on-One, where I interview guests one-on-one. These will be shorter episodes, usually less than an hour, and they'll start 2 weeks from today. I believe by adding this type of show, the Everyone's Agnostic Podcast will have more to offer and have a broader appeal. Think of the 2 styles: 1, Marie and I co-hosting; 2, I'm one-on-one with the guest, as singles tennis and doubles tennis. Both are legit and appeal to different tastes. Secondly, in today's talk with Tom Larson, Marie, my co-host, is unusually quiet. She had a lot on her heart and mind that day, and was much less present than she normally is. And I was strangely over-present, and she could barely get a word in edgewise. I wanted to explain this, lest anyone think that I'm phasing Marie out. Quite the contrary. This is my show, and I enthusiastically invited Marie Delafont to be my co-host, with an equal voice as mine. She is astoundingly smart, shockingly intuitive, with a vast vocabulary, which she pulls from with agility and ease. As you may remember from our first episode together, she made it clear that she was not interested in being a typical, passive, feminine side voice, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I do not censor her in any way, nor would she let me, and vice versa. Lastly, these one-on-one episodes will begin with my old Hank Green intro, and will end with a short sketch by Dave Warnock and me, where we play Leroy and Jerry Dale, two redneck anchormen reviewing the headlines on an AM Christian radio station, the pilot version of which we feature today. We taped this conversation on May 30th, 2019. The intro music is Just Groove Me by Dave Weckl, and I feature a piece composed and performed by our guest Tom Larson back in 1978 called Dolorosa as our segue music. Learn more about us at everyone'sagnostic.com, follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and to request access to our private support group on Facebook, email everyone'sagnostic@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and be a yes-sayer to what is. Hey, Tom.
Hello.
What's going on? You're in California?
I'm in San Diego.
How long you been there?
35 years.
Wow, you must like the town.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the climate better.
Better than what?
Better than the 49 other states.
Yeah.
Rain and snow.
Nice.
Not here.
Do you do the arts in that town? Like, do you go to theaters or plays or musicals?
Sure.
Like, what's a recent one that comes to mind?
I guess there was summer Shakespeare in the Park.
Okay.
Most often.
Did you ever see the Book of Mormon?
No, I haven't. I've heard the recording.
Have you seen Hamilton?
No, I haven't.
See, I have seen Book, but I haven't seen Hamilton. So you have the soundtrack from Book of Mormon?
Yes.
The songs?
Yes, you can buy it.
How do those hit you?
You're asking me questions for which I have no pre-prepared answer. I don't know.
Exactly.
I've forgotten it. I couldn't whistle the tune at all.
So one of the things in that movie or that play was, kind of in the Lion King, whenever stuff was happening in their lives that was hard and they didn't understand why it was happening, it was like Kuna Matata or something. It was some kind of que sera sera. It was trying something to make them feel better.
Hasadiga Iboai.
Yeah, that's the one from. How do you know that?
Because I saw it twice.
Okay, so in the Book of Mormon, when things are going shitty or they have AIDS or whatever, they have this phrase that she just quoted, and it means "fuck God," right?
Yeah, it says it's "fuck you, God."
Yeah, fuck you, God. So instead of it being something to try to silver line it or paint it up nice, it's just "fuck you, God."
Which implies God is a controlling entity.
Right.
Yeah. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
So that's the thing about atheism for us, is that when we first left, a lot of people said, "Well, you're just angry at God," and it's like, well, how do you be angry at unicorns? I mean, you can't. But yet it's a misunderstanding. One more thing I want to run by you when it comes to belief, because I think this is funny. And I used to use this a lot, and I was reminded how good this is. So, okay, two friends. One is a professor in college and an academician. His friend is visiting from out of town. He comes to his house, and he walks in the door, and he sees that there's a horseshoe over the doorway. He looks at his professor friend, and he said, why do you have that? Surely you don't believe this stuff, that the superstition around good luck or whatever. And he said, oh, no, of course I don't believe it. But the guy who sold it to me said it works whether you believe it or not. So I think a lot of Christians say, well, yeah, Jesus probably wasn't born of a virgin, but, so it's a belief kind of cloaked as unbelief, or vice versa. I don't know.
Belief cloaked as unbelief.
Or the other way around, Malik. So he's saying, I don't believe, but yet he hung it.
Yeah, and yet he hung it, but I think actually objects have power, okay? Let me just give you something anecdotal. I remember going to the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, and we were fortunate enough to have to be there in an afternoon when somebody was practicing Bach preludes, and the sound of those preludes in that space was, to me, one of the most awe-inspiring, if not terrorizing, incidents in my life.
Yeah.
Because of the, shall we say, the history of the reverberation in the stone. So I don't think of that as religious at all. It just, that particular sound and that particular composer happened to be associated with that particular building. And I think you can move around the world and find places that do have an extra quality to them that some of us might describe as spiritual.
Yeah,
but certainly not religious. You didn't need a religion to consecrate or hallow the Notre Dame Cathedral, if you understand me.
Yeah, so we're meaning-making, storytelling, pattern-seeking creatures, and sometimes we encase a thing, an event, an object, with a master narrative or with a context that augments and exemplifies and blows up what would otherwise just be a stone, cathedral, or a relic from the watch that your dad was wearing at the moment he died. And, so value and meaning is given to objects that may not make any sense to anybody other than the person creating that meaning.
Yeah.
So a skeptic would say, all right, so the Bach concerto, so you got a bunch of high school guys singing the Four Seasons in the bathroom, and the echo makes it just sound so much better than it would in a dampened room. And so skeptically, you have the acoustics are just right scientifically for that sound to be uniquely amazing. I mean, where else are you going to have that kind of shape and structure and walls? Or as opposed to saying, if these walls, these same rocks, these same stones, that very symphony or that very concerto, the waves, the sound waves, and have been bouncing against those walls, ping-ponging around the room for centuries.
Right.
And so we're hearing a building that's been conditioned by Bach, and now we're hearing it in real time in the 21st century. And so this is a special experience.
Right. And so, but we're also hearing, I fully accept that, but we're also hearing the sound in the human DNA. So that would come down through generations of people. And Notre Dame's a good example because I would imagine families, generations and generations have gone in there to hear whatever.
Yeah.
So that the idea that there is, you're talking to a memoirist.
Okay.
That's my gig. So things that have to do with memory and how the past is held can indeed involve DNA, can involve generations of human beings. So we take a group of tourists from Japan. Could they hear what multi-generations of Parisians could hear in that building? I don't know. I don't know if there's any way to establish that scientifically. But I think both of those things can be true, and they can be both. And we can also have a degree of skepticism about both. That there might be an interplay between the acoustic space and the acoustic DNA space.
Absolutely, yeah.
Of humankind. And I use the Notre Dame because we're going back 10 centuries.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a great example, as opposed to the Four Seasons in a New Jersey bathroom,
Yeah.
which I'm a little I'm a little doubtful of. To me, there's far more projection into that than there is absorption, if I can push it in that direction.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I do think it matters that you just. I mean, we obviously knew we were talking to a memoirist. Maybe our listeners didn't at this point, but because we've already introduced you, so yeah, they knew. But what makes sense to me, as opposed to like just the facts, ma'am. Memoirs aren't interesting if they're just the facts.
Of course not.
They're interesting with the spin and the voice and the tone and the cadence of a unique voice and a unique perspective. And so when somebody says, I felt 6 generations of Bach lovers rising up in my nerve endings as I got chills, or whatever. So I just know that the cynic and the skeptic could say nonsense is bullshit and it's so nuanced, it's not measurable, so you're just talking woo-woo. And then somebody would say, well, if you want good writing, then you're going to have to flower it up a little. Not have to, but you get to.
Well, yeah, let's be careful there because we have a word for what you described, and it's called literature.
I've heard of it.
You've heard of literature? And that's what literature does. Literature has that acoustic space in it that transmutes or transmits the sound patterns of the language that we have become accustomed to, or that we find aesthetic pleasure in. And why do people love movies of the 30s or the 40s that have a particular bent in terms of noir or all those marvelous camera angles that were first discovered by the first directors? There's a quality there that is, to me, that it's inescapable. So, yeah, if my work with memoir, it has so much to do with my work with, I should say, spirituality in memoir has so much to do with aesthetics than it does with belief or doctrine or tearing down the house by which we seem to have gotten here. That's sort of a key argument in my key thematic argument in my writing life, is why is it these things that come to us from the past seem to have a life of their own that can often feel universal, can often feel incomprehensible to any single reader or experiencer of the art. There is some quality there without pushing it into any kind of dogma about the principles of literature.
Yeah. I mean, how much more are we talking than just style?
Style has to do with those things you mentioned earlier, like tone and voice, the deftness with which one writes, or the plainness with which one writes.
The cultural context of their
Sometimes it's
ancestors.
cultural. Yeah, sometimes it's cultural. Sometimes, it's very hard with literary art because it seems to be fading, and the world of film and image seems to be replacing it. I'm not sure if we've reached. Some days I think we're reaching the end of the literary era, which might include 400 years of writing, with a few exceptions going way back. But in that 200 or 400 years, we've had an incredible development of style, transnational to be sure. There's writers from Africa who have stylistic differences from writers from Japan or from Europe or from wherever.
Huge differences.
Huge differences. And so style doesn't really begin to sort of encompass it. I think there's something deeper to the relationship between language and the writer.
Well, I don't know if it was your publicist or agent or whatever, or if it was you that contacted us, but we, Marie and I discussed, was this something that applies to our show or our audience? And the one thing that I thought it might is our listeners who have left the faith, some of them have aspired or intend to write their story.
Right.
Maybe it's just for their kids, grandkids to know their story, or maybe to be published.
Mm-hmm.
And your book is about how it's spirituality in the writer, and one of the things it was that you help people, quote, write to reveal the inner self, the pilgrimage into one's spiritual and or religious nature.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have tips for those of us, because I know people right off the top of my head right now I can name that have said to me, I want to write about my spiritual pilgrimage. But every time I sit down to start, I'm just, all writer's block or whatever. I don't know. But, I mean, maybe there's some tips here to help people feel licensed or empowered or encouraged to go try again.
Well, okay, let me speak to some of that. That's a huge subject of tips or advice or how to get one started in this process. I think the thing that I learned in the last 4 or 5 years in trying to write about religious and spiritual texts, the first thing I learned is to define them and say what they are. The vast majority of Christian writing is theological. It's not personal narrative. As a matter of fact, there's only a handful of writers in the Christian faith per se who have written what I would call sort of true autobiography, in which there is that journey to the inner self. Now, a Christian's journey to his or her inner self is often a journey into agreeing with the doctrine.
Yeah.
And that's the journey. A pilgrimage. It's not a pilgrimage because they haven't gone anywhere.
Yeah, agreed.
They've just gone into the received wisdom of the ancients, especially of a so-called sacred text like the Bible.
We'd be talking more about the journey of an atheist out of the faith.
Well, right. Let me touch on that, because what I found when I started reading what I would call spiritual memoir of the last 50 years is the majority of them were deconversion narratives. I think Maria used that term, deconverted,
right?
And people who've left the faith, lost the faith, often speak about this coming out of a hypnotic trance that they were in.
Yep.
And there is light and deliverance and even fulfillment outside of that. Not all the time, but outside of that. So the deconversion narrative has to be personal, because how was that writer converted? Well, 99 times out of 100, it was through the family. What I would call cradle Christians, cradle Catholics, cradle Baptists. This notion that we are what our parents wanted us to be, which also takes us back to the stones of Notre Dame, that you have 100 generations coming in there who are inculcated or indoctrinated in the faith. It's why Bach sounds like God's music to so many people. I don't experience it that way, but lots of people do.
Yeah, so I know I walked right into it. I mean, I think we've all said before that if I was raised in Saudi Arabia, I'd probably be a Muslim. So it's just kind of this something that we're cradled right into. Is that what you're saying?
Cradled right into, yeah. And my advantage in all this is that I grew up in a non-religious household.
Lucky you.
Lucky you. I say this very often. My parents did the greatest thing they could have in raising me, and that was to leave me alone.
Oh, bravo.
And I was fortunate to have my own room, not until I was about 11 or 12. I had to sort of fight my brothers, and we had to we had to have enough sort of Cain and Abel in my family to require that my dad get a higher paycheck, to get a bigger house, to get us separated. But boy, it was the greatest thing in the world to have my own room, to explore my own aesthetic self, because that's the way I would define my relationship to the world. So my father was born and bred a Catholic. He went to seminary and right away got into fights with the priests, which I've written about. And he left, and he was an angry man who the only pleasure he had, one of the only pleasures he had, I should say, is sleeping in on Sunday mornings, because my mother, via her grandmother, said, Dorothy, don't you think the boys need some exposure to religion? My mother took her up on that, took us to a Methodist church when I was 8. The one thing in the church, again, this goes back to the Notre Dame and the organ music, the thing I fell in love with at the church was the music, was the choir. And that was my relationship to church, was through singing. It's always been my relationship to any religious manifestation. But anyway, I'm very lucky to be a non-religious person. I do not have a dog in the fight. I don't need to adopt a Doberman to go after people, because I don't feel religiously stained.
No.
I know lots and lots of ex-Christians, and I've been to meetings of recovering from religion, RFR, and other atheist groups and so on. I'm very taken with the cause of atheism, but I didn't have that stain. Somebody asked me once about that, and I said, they said, "Are you recovering from religion?" I said, "No, I'm not, but our culture is."
Yep.
And when I applied that to the art of the memoir in the last 50 years, that's one of the main stories that I tell, is this need to be, in order to be, even raise the specter of the spiritual, which I'm still not 100% convinced it exists. To raise that specter, you have to get as far away from religion as you can.
What do you mean by specter?
Well, the specter is that the nature of the spiritual, or the spirit, if we just think of what that word is, and again, this word comes down to us with multiple definitions and dimensions through the history of language, but the spiritual actually means that which comes and goes, that which becomes material and then vanishes. It is equally material and immaterial. And I'm not saying that as a person who's visited by ghosts, although there's a few things that haunt me, but I'm saying that is a way to think about this realm that people often, especially those freed from religion or freed from ideological conversion, actually experience. And it sometimes it's woo-woo, sometimes it's explained as God or any number of other concepts, but there is a very real thing of the spiritual. Can I give you a good example of it?
Sure.
Well, just our mortality, the way we think and feel about our mortality is absolutely apropos of the spiritual, because I think to myself, I don't know what happens when I die. I have the feeling that I'm going to live forever because I haven't died yet. I don't plan on it in the next week or month or few years, but there's a good chance I will. How do I integrate that concept, that idea, which is truly transcendent to me, because I can't just go off and experience it. How do I integrate a transcendent idea like that into the materiality of my everyday life? Well, you have people who want to do that, and they often do it through the arts. It's a way of sort of claiming our immortality, if you will, claiming the sense of remember the old tune Fame, I'm going to live forever. It has that incredible magnetism about it, that when you write a book or an opera or a symphony, that there's something of you, especially of your inner self, that lives on.
Well, have you read Ernest Becker's Denial of Death?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah, that's my Bible. Secondly, I think about this. I don't know if you're talking about serendipity. I mean, if we're just gonna, for myself and the listeners, most of us just completely deny that anything supernatural ever happens. This is a completely natural universe in which we find ourselves, or whatever. Very mathematical and kind of stoic. However, shit happens that's like really fun. Like even a Hail Mary pass that gets caught, we all go ape shit because what are the odds that it happened? You know, big numbers. And the other day, I was telling the story, you know, and then I won't go into it again, but it was kind of mind blowing. Like, oh my God, this moves me. This moves me. Some kind of emotion.
Yeah.
It could be happiness, could be sadness, but the stars aligned and events aligned to where it appeared to be saying something, or it appeared to be having a meaning that I'm supposed to get. Thank you, or
right.
whatever. So, are you familiar with M. Scott Peck's way of saying serendipity?
Somewhat. Yes.
And I think that's a secular way of saying everything happens for a reason, or not everything, but this did. This right here did. I know it. It's for me. And you know, I think the individuality of that is where I don't give a shit about somebody saying, I believe this because I experienced it. Well, that's fine. But don't come to the U.S. Senator, don't become a U.S. Senator and legislate that for the rest of us.
Right, of course.
And that's where, you know, I feel like where the encroaching theocracy is breathing down our necks as we speak.
Well, that's why the cause of atheism is real and should be supported, because those are precisely that kind of secularism in our culture is incredibly worth preserving, if for no other reason than for us to explore those very things you just talked about, which do have to do with mystery. Sometimes people call it fate. Sometimes people call it I love the word inexplicable. And we don't have to sell our independence to call something inexplicable. Dawkins talks about there's many things in the universe that are at present moment inexplicable, and we will eventually discover them.
Yeah. But until then, it's okay to get goosebumps over it or something.
Yeah.
So I guess to wrap it up, we were going to try to do a 30-minute thing, and we're already there. But if you could elevator pitch your book to... So, like I said before, most of our listeners are people that felt lonely and or crazy for losing their faith, especially since Notre Dame was built on that faith and around that faith, and centuries of music, books. There's a church on every corner. There's giant millions and billions of dollars spent on cathedrals, and yet I'm right and all of those people are wrong. You know, one of the reasons I stayed in the faith for so long was I thought there's just no way that all of this hoopla about Jesus was much ado about nothing. You know, so what happened? And you know, those kind of questions. But anyway, that's our audience. Not only were they felt crazy and lonely, but they were hurt because family and friends, in many cases, shunned them and won't talk to them anymore.
Right.
And so they get on, they listen to these testimonies, normally, unlike today's show, where our guest is actually sharing. This is what happened. This is why I lost my faith. This is what my mom and dad said to me, etc. And so I don't know. I thought maybe people would could there's something here that you have for these people that might help them record this season.
Well, once you throw out faith and belief and religion, it does not leave you empty. What it does is it creates a sort of a new egg, as it were, something that can be hatched into something new. So I'm always jealous of people who have lost their clothing, can stand naked in the world and
go shopping.
and go shopping for something, and they don't have to they don't have to go into the tropes of past belief in order to still find mystery. And the other thing about the word spiritual is, don't, just because you're not religious, don't throw that word away. My essence about my argument here is that the religion appropriated the word spiritual, and it is natural to us pre-religion. It's part of our pagan nature to want to have this sense, be it an individual connection to self, family, or community, or to the earth itself. And it doesn't need the trappings that we've given it in the past.
Yeah. Nothing more powerful than wanting to be special to God.
How about being special to the self? And the phrase I use is that in the 20th century, the search for God has been replaced by the individual search for the self.
That's us. We've replaced that. And
yeah.
And in a way, instead of chasing Bigfoot or unicorns that don't exist, we're actually we've got the scent of this mystery. It's just only it's right under our nose because we're just I've also, and this comes up, I don't know if this is relevant, but I've also lately ran into some people who are saying, sometimes the pursuit of self can get so radical and enthusiastic and zany that you do miss the gold in your own backyard by maybe you just need to relax and just be and find the path by walking it, find the self by being it. And I don't know, you want to speak to that?
Well, yeah, but if you're dealing with, and again, your audience, if we're dealing with people who have this religious bent or turn thrust upon them or accepted on their own, they, even though you get rid of that as a source, you still have this intensity of feeling left over. It's almost as if all the water was boiled out of the pot, but the pot is still hot. So to me, that's where the art comes in: the writing, the dance, the video, the film, something to express what that sense of lostness or newness or freshness is. And to me, that can, again, both and are true. You don't, the pursuit of the self is not necessarily, does not cast out the pursuit of a community to live in. Carl Jung had a wonderful phrase for this. He says, why do we live such long lives, especially when we're far beyond the childbearing ages or the child raising ages? And he says, one thing he said is to individuate, which essentially means to have more time to devote to our particular passion or calling. But the other one, and more important for me as a writer of books, is to help continue the culture that allowed people like me to flourish in it. And those two things are worth the many years that the drug companies are going to keep us alive in the pursuit of both self and community.
So, if people want to get the book, I'm curious, would you ever give out your email or something to where if somebody maybe listening to this show wanted to ask you a question or something?
Sure, absolutely. Just go to my website, which is thomaslarson.com, and there's lots about my book, and my email is there, and ways to communicate with me. I'm always happy to hear from people.
It looks like you have some writing workshops too.
Yeah, I have a few coming up in the Midwest in June and July. I'm going to be in Cleveland, Indianapolis, Huntington, West Virginia, which will really be a trip because apparently it's a Christian community that wants to challenge me. So I can't wait. I mean, that's marvelous. And I've done workshops in San Diego and Santa Fe, looking to do more in Oregon and Washington in the fall. So yeah, I keep tabs on all that and put up notices.
Yeah. So in closing, sometimes we ask personal questions just to kind of tap into the human side of our guest. And one of our common is like, what is something that you're really most proud of?
My relationship with my partner has been 30 years.
Okay.
And to make a very long story quick, it has evolved to the point where I didn't know it could get this well. In other words, we have gone through some loss, which has to do with the loss of a child. And we're integrating that and moving with it into the future. And I didn't realize that even in profound grief, there would be such profound intimacy. And that's what I'm most proud of. I can't take all that credit. I have to share it with my partner, Susanna.
Yeah. How about, do you have any guilty pleasures as far as Netflix binging or something that you...
Well, again, for our audience, I can use the possessive pronoun there. For our audience, Wild Wild Country on Netflix was marvelous. It was it's the story of the Rajneesh, the guru who set up this community in Oregon and had 2,000 followers, and the man of many Rolls Royces and young trust fund women that he were procured for his bed. It is a 7-part series. It's one of the best documentaries I've ever seen about the ideological ease with which religions and other political groups can hornswoggle Americans. It's incredible. Hornswoggle, to use a term from my Missouri youth.
I've never heard that.
Yeah. By all means, watch it. Wild Wild Country.
I have seen that, as a matter of fact.
Have you actually? Oh, I thought it was marvelous.
Well, and I think you're right. I was going to ask you, and you answered it before I got to, but that's just, it points out the credulity, just almost the human nature of wishful thinking can take us to places of gullibility that are just shameful. And yet, it's just what it means to be human. And so, as a humanist, a secular humanist, I can't shame myself or anybody else for being that way, but it sure is embarrassing sometimes.
Well, it says something about what it means to be an American, because we are the fastest mythological producing country, I think, that ever existed. I think the Greeks and the Romans had longer empires in which to produce their mythologies, and the Egyptians, and that's why they're so well. They seem to be like us, but we've accelerated it. We've accelerated it beyond belief.
Right.
Thus, we could elect a person like Donald Trump. You have to have an ideological mindset that allows that sort of P.T. Barnum into our politics that no one has ever seen before. I don't know how it could get any worse, but we said that 6 years ago.
Well, but yeah, as far as an explanation of like how did this happen, and that there's a narrative, there's a lot of them, and we've talked about them on the show a lot.
And can we also say it's the dark spirituality of our country? It's the fact that we do not come to grips with our killing machines in war in the last 70 years, and the historical Holocaust of slavery. We probably will never come to grips with those things because we seek ways to deny them.
Yeah. Yeah. Head in the sand.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Tom, I appreciate you coming on, and I guess we'll talk more about your website and stuff after we get off. More ways for people to get in touch with you.
Great. I appreciate the dialogue.
Thanks for coming.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
So that's our talk with Tom Larson. I really enjoyed talking with him. I hear a gentle man, calm and comfortable, smart but unassuming, refined and healed over time, a lover of the arts who looks to art to heal, to strengthen, to embolden, to access one's innermost secrets and one's essence. Can you imagine that the writing of your own memoir might make you a stronger, healthier person, even if no one reads it? Writing is hard work. Accessing old memories and putting them to words is exhausting work, I'd imagine. Is it worthwhile? I believe Tom would say yes, it is worthwhile. His book, Spirituality and the Writer, might help you write your own. Up next, AM Christian Radio KING with Leroy and Jerry Dale. Welcome to the Leroy and Jerry Dale Show on KING AM Christian Radio.
Jesus King.
We're pushing the kingdom forward.
This is Leroy. What's up, Jerry Dale?
Jerry Dale is my name.
Hey, how's everybody out there? This is our weekend news update with commentary. Because we know that yins ain't smart enough to read the news and know what's going on, so you have to have somebody tell you what the hell that means.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to know what
There's
to
a lot
think.
of stuff out there. There's a lot of fake news out there.
Fake fucking news.
Fake news.
Oh, bleep that out.
Did he say fucking right off the bat?
All right, I need to say a repentant prayer. Hang on a second. Moment of silence for that fuck.
I say it again. He can't help himself.
We'll have a bunch of dead air if we keep talking like that.
He can't help himself. He's got the potty mouth. That's what he's got. Now, I say it every now and then, but I don't say it like Jerry Dale. It's every other word with him.
It was my mom's fault. She talked like that all the time, and I picked it up.
I don't believe you ought to be blaming your mama. So what's in the news? I know what's big news going on here.
What that?
That Hurricane Dorian.
Dorian.
Huh?
Dorian, I think.
Who's Dorian?
At the name of the hurricane.
That's Dorian. Anyway,
You're just stubborn.
what it was, and y'all need to understand this out there listening, it was a Category 5, and our president himself said he ain't never seen the Category 5 or didn't even know there was such a thing.
He said that last time. Actually, 3 other times. There's
really?
been 3 Category 5 hurricanes during his presidency.
You mean he said something?
And every time he said, I've never heard of this, and it's never been done before.
I don't believe he said that. How do you know he said that?
Because I watch the news. I am an anchor man.
Are you saying he lied?
Hell yeah, I'm saying he lied.
Oh, come on. Donald Trump don't lie. Everybody else does. He speaks more truth than any president I've ever known.
You've been hoodwinked.
I don't think that's right. I think you're wrong. He's the most godly president we've ever had.
How you figure?
Well, just look at what he's doing for us. He's taking care of the white people.
And
that's what we need.
stopping killing babies.
That's right. You can't... we don't even want to get started on that abortion. Back to the Dorian, that hurricane. So, it was a Category 5.
Biggin.
And I tell you what happened is folks got to praying.
It was about to hit Florida.
And then folks got to praying. I seen that one prophetess. She had her magic wand like something out of Lord of the Rings, and she was commanding that hurricane to go east. And I'll be damned if it didn't.
We have authority over wind,
the weather,
and
the rain,
all of it. Rain dance. You can do a rain dance and make it rain.
So she made that hurricane go away through prayer. Now, if y'all don't think prayer works, you just look at that and tell me what that is.
Power. That's power right there. On display. Saw it myself.
Well, wait a minute here. It says it hit North Carolina.
Well, what beach was she praying from?
She was in Florida.
See, she did it, and nobody showed up to the North Carolina beach. Otherwise,
No, I know for sure there's people in North Carolina praying, and it didn't work. So I don't understand. I'm I didn't realize it hit North Carolina. Did you know that?
Well, what are you trying to say? That God doesn't answer prayer, or that maybe they had sin in their heart while they were praying?
Well, you got a point there. That sin will get you.
Nullifies your prayers.
That sin will slip up on you out of nowhere. You be going along,
thinking that you're God's good side,
just doing your best and thinking everything's fine, and you're going to the grocery to get something for lunch, and I'll be damned if some slutty woman doesn't come out of the store with her boobs hanging out,
make you stumble,
and make you lust.
Better be a brimstone tied around her neck, and
I tell you what, it's them women
causing you to stumble.
It's them women. It's been them women since Eve. I swear to God.
I do not like burqas or Arabs or Muslims in our country, but we maybe should start wrapping our women up.
They do cover them up, don't they? They got that right, don't they?
They prevent the men from lusting by covering those bitches up. Right.
And if them bitches show some skin, you know what they'll do?
They'll go in the back room and masturbate.
I don't know about that, man. I don't know about that masturbating. I don't do that sort of stuff. At least I don't admit to it.
Not on the air, at least.
I don't believe Jesus likes that masturbating. Back to the women, because I think that's the biggest problem we got in this country is the women trying to take over. Them and the gays.
They don't know their place anymore.
Them and the gays. The gays are trying to take over.
It's a dangerous thing when you get gays up in the limelight where kids can see them and they get permission to go, oh, I can be gay too. Next thing you know, they're gay.
I saw an advertisement on TV, and it showed two men.
Kissing.
Kissing?
La, 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 la.
They was kissing on the TV.
You're going to make me throw up in my mouth a little bit.
It ain't right, Jaredale. Well, back to that hurricane.
Dorian.
I don't care what they call it. But I'm talking about prayer now. Because we know that's the greatest force in this country. So what do you say to those folks that say to you prayer don't work?
God works in mysterious ways. Sometimes a yes is a yes and a no is a no.
Amen, and amen. You're preaching now, brother.
Otherwise, you're trying to tell God what to do, and he already knows what to do.
Well, I've had folks tell me if God knows what he's going to do already, then why pray?
I'll tell you why.
Tell me why.
Because what we speak with our mouths here on the earth is loosed on the earth, is loosed in heaven. God is waiting for humans to give him permission to do what he already wants to do. And he looked for a man to stand in the gap, and he didn't find one, and so he hit North Carolina's beach. God dang it.
So there wasn't nobody in North Carolina standing in the gap? Is that what you're saying?
It doesn't look as if, right? I mean, that's what you got to deduct from the facts.
That's the only thing that makes sense to me. You North Carolina people, I don't know what the hell's wrong with you.
Better show up next time.
I mean, God told you right there, like Jaredale just said, God told you to stand in the gap. It ain't that fucking hard.
I'm going to take
God, I said the fucking word. I'm so sorry.
A moment of silence. I'm going to take it up to another level.
Go.
If you are a Christian, at least claim to be, you're out there praying that storm won't hit your house or your storefront, and yet you board it up. What does that say about your faith?
You got no faith.
You got no faith.
You stand there in your living room next to that window and you pray.
Untaped window.
Open that darn window. Just open that thing and say, God, here I am trusting you. Because if you can't do that,
you don't have faith.
Don't tell me about faith. Don't even talk about it. Don't even say the word.
You are a poser.
You're a fake Christian. Real Christians trust and have faith.
Don't go to the doctor.
And another thing I think about North Carolina, I think there's a lot of gays there. Why else would that hurricane hit there if there wasn't a bunch of gays? Because that's what God does. He brings judgment on places where the gays are.
I think South Carolina is a pretty non-gay place.
And it didn't hit no South Carolina, did it?
But what if God... Follow me here, Leroy.
I'm trying to.
What if God is trying to get to San Francisco by way of the East Coast, and he has to start with South Carolina?
Did it hit South Carolina? I thought it hit North Carolina.
North Carolina, one of them Carolinas.
They're all saying
he's trying to get to San Francisco by way of the East Coast and got to start somewhere.
I think you're on to something.
It's them gays in San Francisco.
So we need to look at it. Here's what we need to do, folks. You out there listening in the country. You need to look at a map. Get a map of the country, because I know you don't know where the states are, because I don't. But get a map of the country, and you need to chart a line from the Carolinas. Were you raising your butt so you could fart?
Well... You don't have to say it on front of everybody.
I seen you do that. Lawyer's over there passing gas. Get you a map and draw you a line from the Carolinas, whichever one, north, south, it don't matter, all the way to San Francisco, and I'll tell you what. As God is my witness, you better look out. Storms are headed your way.
That's the path.
That's the path of the Holy One.
I got you, Matthew 8:26. He said to them, "Why are you afraid, O men of little faith?" Then he got up and he rebuked the winds and the sea.
Oh, there you go.
And it became perfectly calm.
Oh, there you go. See there?
The men were arrested and said, "What kind of man is this?" That's what they say about Jesus.
Who arrested them?
KING Radio, King Radio.
You said the men were arrested. I didn't understand that part.
Oh,
I don't pretend to know that much about the Bible. I just know it's God's word, and we got to live by it. But I don't know what it says.
Yeah, I misread. It said the men were amazed, not arrested.
Damn it! See, that's where we get confused.
Those words are similar. You have to admit.
And you know what? When people say there's contradictions in there, that's what they're doing. They're reading the wrong words, just like you did. You don't even need to know what's in there. You just trust God's word.
I'm human. I thought it said arrested. It said amazed.
Well,
just shows us that we can't really.
We can't understand nothing.
Lean not
on
our own understanding.
Nothing. We got to have somebody tell us what to do and how to do it. That's why we need these preachers, the anointed of God, the men of God that He's anointed to tell us what to do.
Otherwise,
we don't know what to do. We'll be saying fuck all the time, and we'll be masturbating and lusting.
Well,
but if these preachers weren't there to tell us not to do that, oh hell, I'd do it all the time.
And be proud. You'd be proud.
I'd be proud of it.
And God hates
proud. I wouldn't
proud.
care.
He humbles the proud.
And He gives grace to the meek. See there, we know some Bible.
I'm
telling you, it's hard though. It's hard though. That's what she said.
That's not appropriate, Leroy. You made me think for a second of a naked lady. Now I got that in my head. Now you caused me to stumble.
It don't take much to cause Jerry Dale to stumble,
I'm
y'all.
gonna put a burqa on you.
It don't take much. Jerry Dale is a stumble looking to happen when he gets out of bed every day.
I said the other day, you show me an ink blot, and I'm gonna show you a vagina.
Well, I see boobs because I'm more of a boob man. Oh, we're off the rails now. We're both stumbling.
We're going to get kicked off the air, let alone out of the kingdom.
We're both stumbling. Forgive us, Lord. We know not what we do. We don't have a clue what we're doing most of the time.
That's why we need Jesus.
That's right. And preachers.
We got nothing.
You know, we need people on the radio like us telling us what the news means. So if you're confused about that hurricane and what happened and why it happened, thank God we had a president in the White House telling us what it was. And where he drew a map and showed us where it was going. And some people think he got it wrong because he said Alabama. But, you know, he's like God. He don't get nothing wrong. So if he says that hurricane's going to Alabama, then by God, it's going to Alabama. And it don't matter if it doesn't look like it got there or not. It's going there.
It might have been a spiritual tornado that went to.
Spiritual hurricane.
Trump is probably able to see the invisible spiritual hurricanes.
He is.
Unlike the weathermen and the science people that think they're smarty pants.
They just
all they see is the real hurricane, but Trump and spiritual prophets.
The Bible says that you can't trust what you see. Whatever you see is not true, and what you don't see is true, or something like that.
And to believe the prophets, and he's a prophet.
He's a prophet. You can't have hair like that and not be a prophet. I'm sorry. You just can't.
You think that has something to do with it?
Well, of course it does.
Hair?
Yeah. All the preachers got that hair. You know it's right.
I've never thought of that.
Well, I'm here to
Leroy,
help you. I'm here to help.
You might be onto something.
That's what I'm here to do is help the people. I do the best I can.
That right there was prophetic. You're doing it right here.
I got tingles. I got the Holy Ghost
I'm starting
tingles.
to get a Woody.
I know. No. See how he goes, folks? That Jerry Dale, he gets a Woody every time you talk about anything.
Holy Ghost tingles.
Ula
kala shandari.
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
We can do it. We can call forth that which is not as though it were.
What else is in the news? Anything we need to cover today? That's pretty much it.
I'm tired.
That's all I can do
and I
today.
think the FCC's knocking on the door.
Well, I gotta go have me a nap. I'm wore out from doing this news and the commentary on the news. We'll be back with you next time for the news from KING King Jesus Radio.